Order. Wendy Morton to move the motion.
Thank you. And I beg to move that this House has considered transport connectivity in the Midlands and North Wales. And firstly, let me say it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today, Ms Furness, and to open this debate on a subject that goes to the heart of economic opportunity, social mobility and quality of life. Connectivity determines whether people can easily get to work, get to school and get out and about. For communities such as mine and Aldridge Brownhills, the state of our transport links will decide whether young people can access opportunities, whether businesses can grow. And reliable transport and good connectivity are not nice to have extras, they are actually fundamental to how well off and connected our region is. And right now, we must do so much better. So today, I will focus on 3 areas where I believe ambition has been promised, but where delivery is falling short. And that's in terms of buses, rail infrastructure and our roads. So let me start with buses, because for many people, they are the only form of public transport available, not least in my own constituency, which still does not have a single railway station. Bus fares matter, particularly for young people. And if we're serious about opportunity, we cannot price young people off the network. Other regions have recognised this and they've acted. In Tees Valley, the Conservative Mayor Ben Houchen introduced a £1 bus fare for everyone aged 21 and under. And it's been a clear success, boosting ridership and helping young people get to work, get to college and to get to their apprenticeships. Wales has followed suit, rolling out £1 single fares for 16 to 21-year-olds across the country, with plans to extend the scheme further. So my constituents are left asking a simple question: why not the Mayor of the West Midlands? Our Labour Mayor so often talks about fairness and inclusion, yet young people in our region continue to face some of the highest bus fares in the country. While other areas cut fares to widen opportunity, young people here are still paying full price just to get to work or education.
Fares being an issue, its roots, and certainly Derbyshire saw 60% of the loss of bus routes in the 15 years running up to 2023. So would she say it's hugely disappointing that we've had such a long period of time, most of which under her party's government, where we saw bus routes slashed?
What I would say is I'm not an expert when it comes to Derbyshire bus routes at all. But what I would say is that I absolutely recognise the importance of good connectivity. And now in the West Midlands, I have a number of constituents who on a regular basis will be raising with me, why has this bus route changed? Why has that bus route changed? So it absolutely matters to our constituents. But the point that I was making about connectivity and about the lack of fairness for young people, it doesn't surely have to be inevitable. We've seen that targeted youth fares can work. But what is missing in the West Midlands, sadly, is not evidence, but it's political will. If fairness and inclusion really are priorities, then a West Midlands youth bus fare scheme should be delivered quickly. Alongside this, our Mayor has promised a transformation of a bus network through franchising. In principle, greater local control can offer integrated routes. It can offer reasonable fares and improved standards. But the Mayor does need to be honest with us now about the timetable and the cost, because franchising will not deliver meaningful change for many years. And the funding currently allocated is a fraction what will ultimately be required to deliver this. Greater Manchester's experience shows that franchising takes time and it takes significant investment. And in the meantime, our bus services remain unreliable and under-resourced. And yet once again, we see that passengers are promised jam tomorrow. Transport users need buses that turn up and they need fares that they can afford, not more empty words, of course.
I'm very grateful, Ms Furness, to the Honourable Lady for giving way. She represents one part of the West Midlands, I represent another, the last seat in Staffordshire on the Cheshire border. And many of the challenges that my constituents in Madeley and Audley and Woolstanton and Clayton raised with me is the impact that private companies like D&G and First Bus at play in delivering the bad service or the unreliable service to which she's referred. So isn't it right, as well as political will, that we get those bus companies to step up and deliver too?
I absolutely agree. This actually needs a wider approach to make it happen. I know from casework we sometimes need to write to companies and ask them what is happening with a specific bus service. I just want a better bus service for my constituents so that they can get to work, they can get to education. I remember growing up in a rural area where we had one bus service, this wasn't in the West Midlands, one bus service a week. One bus service a week. That's, you know, young people in particular need access to good transport. But just going back to franchising, it's a long-term ambition, but interim action is essential. That means supporting new routes and the routes that we have now. Improving reliability is so important, and the important point about addressing fares. We cannot pin all our hopes on reforms a decade away while services deteriorate at the present. The gap between promise and delivery on our buses must be closed as a matter of urgency. And that same gap is even more stark when we turn to rail. Now, the Midlands Rail Hub is the single most important rail project for our region. I do agree on many things. Alongside Aldridge train station, of course. It is a scheme that would unlock capacity, allow more frequent services and make new and reopened stations viable. So when I ask ministers, and I press this, whether it is fully funded, the answer is always the same. It's £123 million has been allocated, not to deliver the project, but merely to progress the next phase of development. The remainder, which is an estimated £1.75 billion, is still described as subject to future funding decisions. We were told the Midlands Rail Hub would be delivered in full. The previous Conservative government committed £1.75 billion in the 2023 Network North plan to deliver it. That funding has since been pulled by the Labour government, leaving the delivery of the project in full in limbo. And I'm hoping, and I'll be very happy if the Minister, when he sums up, can actually provide that clarity that this project is fully funded to delivery, because it is critical to making sure that the West Midlands and the greater part of the region we keep on moving, and we have that much improved connectivity that enables new routes to be opened up, and that we can have greater passenger capacity. So the government now talks about Northern Powerhouse Rail, but without the Midlands Rail Hub, there is no Midlands engine to power it. We need both, and we need them delivered. The same uncertainty applies when ministers are asked about passenger services on the Sutton Park line. The line remains freight only, and any future passenger use is said to depend on additional capacity. The very capacity that the Midlands Rail Hub was meant to provide. There is no timetable, there is no commitment, sadly, there is no plan. It is a policy paralysis. Infrastructure that is not funded, and then a lack of infrastructure is being used as the reason that nothing can progress. So either the Midlands Rail Hub is built or it is not. But indefinite reviews and partial funding help no one, not least the residents in my constituency and across the West Midlands, and our local businesses too. So this brings me to Aldridge train station. It will come as no surprise to the Minister that I would be raising Aldridge train station. Why? Because this matters. Aldridge is a major settlement of some 25,000 people that has been without a passenger railway station for decades, despite clear demand and a growing population. Under the previous Mayor, Andy Street, funding was identified, land was secured, and the project was moving towards delivery. Local people were given a timeline and told a new station was coming. Then priorities changed. A review happened, funding was redirected, the project was placed under review, and Aldridge train station was pushed into the long grass, or some may say it was pushed into the sidings. It did not fail a business case. It fell victim to political decisions. with the government allowing the secured funding for the station to be moved to pet projects of the Labour Mayor of the West Midlands. And rest assured, Ms Furness, I will continue to raise this issue at every opportunity, as the Speaker of the House is all too aware at Thursday Business Questions, because it matters. Now, when pressed on rail expansion in the north and east of the West Midlands, the answer is always the same: future funding, future capacity, under review. Aldridge is told to wait. Sutton Park is told to wait. But, Madam Chairman, my constituents have waited for long enough. Before leaving the topic of rail, I also want to highlight the importance of open access operators. Services such as the proposed Wrexham, Shropshire and Midlands Railway could bring new connectivity. It could bring competition, with trains running along the Sutton Park line through Aldridge. But because Aldridge still has no station, those trains will pass straight through. Open access has a role to play, but only if the infrastructure is delivered. Supporting open access must go hand in hand with delivering projects such as Aldridge Station. I'm hugely supportive of this project, but it must stop in Aldridge. So far, I focused on public transport, but roads are equally critical. And in Aldridge Brown Hills, our roads remain very much the backbone of local travel. But yet here too, our development needs are racing ahead of infrastructure. Large-scale housing proposals, another one of the topics that I regularly raise in this House, on green belt land around Stonnell Road and Bosty Lane would add hundreds of new homes without the road upgrades needed to support them. Those roads already feed into Chester Road, which sadly, all too sadly, is an accident black spot, with a tragic history of serious injuries and fatalities.
Yeah.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. I'd like to just interject on her point around Chester Road. I know this is something we've both done some work on, it being a place where one of my constituents unfortunately lost their life a number of years ago. One thing I would say on that is if she's able to update us about any conversations she's had with Walsall Council about that area, I'd be very appreciative, as I'm sure constituents will as well.
And I'm really grateful to the honourable gentleman for making that point. As he rightly indicates, it's an issue that we both share an interest in, and rest assured I do and will continue to raise it with Walsall Council, because it really, really does matter. I know the specific case that he is referring to, and it was a tragedy what happened. And of course, we have local campaigners such as SCAR who've long called for action, and I'd like to also pay tribute to some of our local road safety campaigners, not just Jane Preston. She will love having a mention in this place, even though it's in very sad circumstances, but also Colin Roberts, who've done tremendous work and continue to raise the issue of road safety, and also of victims as well. I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge a charity called Road Peace, a national charity for road crash victims, with whom I have worked locally. For over 3 decades, they've supported bereaved families and campaigned for safer roads. Their recent closure as a charity is deeply, deeply saddening, and it really should remind us all of the human cost of what happens when we get road safety wrong. So whilst I welcome some recent funding for safety measures on Chester Road near this particular black spot that we were discussing, residents are rightly asking where the wider plan is, because you cannot add hundreds of homes without first investing in the roads and junctions that residents will rely on every day, junctions that currently residents already rely on even without any more homes being built. This particular development will be development without infrastructure. So if housing targets are being imposed, which is very much what is happening in the West Midlands in my area, infrastructure funding must be part of that. Roads, junctions, traffic management and public transport links must come before houses are occupied, not years afterwards. The Midlands and North Wales do not need more warm words or long-term plans that never quite materialise. We need transport that works at a price that people can afford. So across buses, rail and roads, the pattern is the same. Ambition without delivery. Young people priced off the buses, rail schemes left half-funded, towns told to wait, housing built without infrastructure. Things don't have to be this way. We know what works, but what is missing is action and delivery. So I'd just like to gently say to the Minister, if the government wants people to believe in its plans for growth, it must start matching ambition with delivery. Our region is ready to play its part, but it cannot do so with stalled projects and permanent delay. Our communities have waited long enough. It is time to stop reviewing, stop deferring, and start delivering the transport that actually works. So I really genuinely look forward to hearing from the Minister today and as to how he intends to make this happen. And I'll happily meet with him to discuss Aldridge train station, to see what more can we do to make sure the Mayor of the West Midlands understands why this absolutely matters, why I keep banging on about it, and why I will keep doing so until we see it delivered. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered transport connectivity in the Midlands and North Wales. Josh Newbury.
Thank you, Ms Furness. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you in the chair. I would like to focus most of my speech this afternoon on Rugeley Trent Valley Station, which, although technically just over the border in the Lichfield constituency of my honourable friend and neighbour, constituency-wise and in the chamber today, is of interest to my constituents, particularly those in Rugeley and Brereton. As we know, transport connectivity doesn't stop at constituency boundaries or council boundaries, and neither does the impact of where facilities are not adequate for everybody. Rugeley Trent Valley is a striking example. The station has 3 platforms, yet only platform 3, serving trains towards Lichfield and London, is step-free. Platforms 1 and 2, serving far distant locations like Birmingham, Stafford, Crewe, can only be reached via a steep footbridge. In practice, that means that wheelchair users, parents with prams, older people, anybody with limited mobility are effectively barred from using 2/3 of the station. With the delays that often characterise Avanti West Coast services and short connection times, running across from one platform to the next is simply not an option for many of my constituents. I want to give some real-life human examples of this. One constituent in her 80s has told me that she can no longer visit her family because she can't carry a suitcase up and down the steep staircases safely. This highlights the barriers which are not just limited to wheelchair users. Another constituent recounted travelling with a friend who has serious mobility issues from the waist down. He arrived at the station only to discover that the only way for him to catch the connecting train that they were taking was to physically haul himself up and down the stairs. Station staff did what they could, but goodwill can't overcome infrastructure that excludes so many people within our communities. People are desperate to make journeys for work, healthcare or family reasons, and they'll often attempt unsafe routes if no accessible alternatives exist. Whilst the British Transport Police and station operators do what they can to manage risk, long detours or temporary measures can't substitute for basic dignity and safety. Using the Office of Rail and Road database, I noticed that Rugeley Trent Valley saw more than 200,000 people exit and enter the station in 2024-25. Another of my constituents highlighted to me that other stations elsewhere on our network, even with fairly similar footfall or electrified lines, have been upgraded with lifts, waiting rooms and toilets. Kidsgrove Station near Stoke-on-Trent is one such example. Clearly, it's not just a question of engineering and possibility, but of prioritisation. West Midlands Trains and London North Western Railway have told me that they fully support installing lifts at Rugeley Trent Valley. They acknowledge the station's accessibility issues and the impact on passengers, but major upgrades such as this fall, as many honourable members will know, under Network Rail's Access for All programme, which is always heavily oversubscribed. There are over 2,500 stations in the country requiring these types of upgrades, and Network Rail applies very strict criteria, prioritising stations by passenger numbers and the proximity to the next accessible station. For Rugeley, nearby stations like Stafford and Lichfield Trent Valley score higher under this system. Although Rugeley has been discussed and even shortlisted previously, the next allocation of funding, I understand, is still several years away. In the meantime, passengers are offered so-called mitigations, like being carried to the next accessible station and sent back again, or provided with discretionary road transport. For many of my constituents, these are simply not viable or dignified solutions. They're workarounds for systemic failure. showing exactly what regional inequality looks like. Smaller towns often having to wait endlessly at the back of a queue, whilst people with the greatest need are left to navigate shortcomings in the system.
Will my honourable friend give way?
Yes, I'll happily give way.
Dave
I
Robertson.
thank my honourable friend for giving way. He is absolutely elucidating some of the problems that we face at Rugeley Trent Valley Station, and I know he's an absolutely doughty campaigner on this, and it's a pleasure to work with him on that and to follow on his lead. This is an issue that affects not only his constituents but a number of mine as well. And I just want to go back to that point about, the next station is Lichfield Trent Valley. Very few people in this room will have ever tried to do that journey. It's not that simple. There is no direct road that links it. You have to go through Armitage, or you have to go... it's a circuitous way. So sometimes just looking at the distance between those two stations is not sufficient. You have to look at travel times. You have to look at the practicalities of being able to do that. Sometimes that I feel are overlooked through by the access to all process. And yeah, he was making an excellent point. I just wanted to reinforce that. Thank you.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. He absolutely highlights the plethora of issues we have at Rugeley Trent Valley, which are not just restricted to this one footbridge. Coming in and out of the station, you're effectively on a national speed limit rural road with very poor visibility from both sides. So the problems at this station are plentiful. So even though it provides a fantastic facility for people to be able to get to destinations as far away as London, it really isn't set up very well to handle that level of traffic. But I would also, on a more positive note, like to highlight progress on the Midlands Rail Hub, which will strengthen connections across the West Midlands and help more people get around quicker and easier. I hope and expect that the Rail Hub will have a positive knock-on effect for the whole region, including on the Chase line, which serves my constituency. This project is an example of how investment can make a tangible difference to everyday travel, and I welcome the government's commitment to progressing this project and delivering these improvements as confirmed in the budget. It should also be said that in Cannock Chase, the vast majority of public transport journeys are made on buses, and it is buses that often feature heavily in my postbag. I was immensely proud to serve on the Bill Committee for the Bus Services Act and to support this bill, which begins to address long-term declines in our bus services, not only more than half of all routes lost in my constituency, but also the frequency and reliability of services which have also been so eroded under the previous government. I very much welcome the unshackling of councils when it comes to setting up publicly owned bus companies and seizing the opportunities to take back control of fares, routes and timetables, something my constituents have been calling for many, many years. The Act is on the statute book, so now the ball is in the court of reform-led Staffordshire County Council, who so far seem to be showing the same disinterest in boosting bus routes and taking advantage of franchising as the previous Conservative administration. For residents in parts of my constituency that need reliable buses the most and yet don't live on a route at all, like those in the Norton East area of Norton Keynes, Slitting Mill and Etching Hill in Rugeley, to name a few, action is urgently needed. Yes, I'll happily give way.
Adam Goji.
Thank you, Ms Furness. I'm grateful to my county neighbour for giving way. I just want to give voice to the people in his constituency who he's just referred to. People in Newcastle, Lyme and North Staffordshire share very much those feelings of urgent need from the County Council. I join him in urging them to get their act together and get it together quick.
Thank you, Ms Furness. I thank my colleague from Staffordshire for backing up my point. I think we all have examples in our constituencies of where these powers are urgently needed and where they could make a massive difference if the council gets its act together, as he said, and gets on with it. And he'll know, particularly in rural parts of our constituency, they are often the areas that are worst served and actually most isolated because of that. My constituency, every day, the impact of regional transport inequality, whether it's a bus that never comes or a platform that can't be reached. I welcome the government's determination to put fairness and accessibility at the heart of transport policy, and I'll continue to work constructively to ensure that my constituency, Cannock Chase, receive the investment that they need. Looking ahead, I hope the Department for Transport can ensure that accessibility is key to funding decisions so that towns like mine don't continue to be left behind. I'd also welcome some clarity from the Minister on what short-term measures could be introduced while longer-term solutions are delivered, so that passengers aren't forced to choose between safety, independence and making essential journeys. By working together, I'm confident that all residents in Cannock Chase and across the Midlands can access a public transport network that is safe, reliable and inclusive. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Ms Furness. Can I say what a pleasure it is to be able to take part in a debate with you in a chair, and indeed to thank those people who've already spoken in it. I'm really here to talk about rail today. I'd love to talk about buses, but I don't think I'm going to have time. And specifically, I would like to address the Midlands Rail Hub project. And I know the Honourable Member for Aldridge Brownhills has already raised this, because it was a project conceived under the previous Conservative government. I'm not going to shy away from that. Unfortunately, it then sat on the shelf gathering dust, and there was no real movement on that until after the election, when this Labour government came in and found... Oh, well, of course.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I can't resist. The situation with the Midlands rail Hub is actually, we did in government commit to it under part of the big Network North announcement that was made prior to the general election, and we committed the funding to it.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her interjection. She does mention the Network North money, which I think there was a mythical project last seen leaving London, carried by Dick Whittington riding Shergar. The money simply didn't exist, and it is this Labour government which has found money in the budget to be able to put to this project. And not only that, it's not only the money that's there, the Alliance for Delivery has already been appointed, and things are moving at pace. And I am very much hoping to see spades in the ground this year, and moving that project ahead so that we can all start to benefit from that project as soon as possible. Because it's you, Wendy.
Thank you very much. Just again on the point of funding, is the honourable gentleman then sure that his government has committed, has fully funded all of the monies needed to deliver the West Midlands Rail Hub in full? Not just one part of it or the other, but the whole of the Midlands Rail Hub.
I think the Honourable Lady again starts driving at this point, but I think what we're seeing is the difference between words from one side of this House and action from another. We've seen that in large parts of my constituency over a number of years, but I will seek to make some progress rather than be sidetracked into the numerous failings of the previous government. The Midland Rail Hub is a huge boost to travel across our region. It will increase rail capacity in Birmingham, leading to more than 300 trains passing in and out of the nation's second city every single day. The benefits will be felt across the East Midlands, the West Midlands and beyond, indeed with even extra services from the Midlands to Wales as part of this project. For Lichfield, Burntwood and the villages, my constituency, it will mean a doubling of the number of hourly trains on the cross-city line to Birmingham. That is the busiest commuter line in the country outside of London, and services there were slashed under the previous government, and we need Midland Rail Hub to make sure that we are getting them back on a sustainable footing in the long term. Yeah. Rail Hub is an important investment, but it cannot be the end of the story for the Midlands. We've known that for far too long there's been far too little investment in transport in the region and also neighbouring regions. I'm very aware I'm sitting next to an MP from the East Mids. London and the South West do enjoy that fantastic turn-up-and-go service that we in the Midlands can only dream of. And now we're seeing that investment in the north with Northern Powerhouse Rail. It's right that we rebalance that, but we cannot overlook the bit in between. In my area, the next step is clear. It's Midlands Rail Hub. And following that, we really need to start to be looking for the reopening of the Lichfield, Burton and Derby line for passenger services. It's the South Staffordshire line in parlance. This is an existing train line that already carries passengers. It just doesn't have stops. It's a diversion route. Trains have to use it so drivers can maintain route knowledge, but it doesn't have stops. Previous scoping work for this project suggested it could deliver, at a minimum, a £7 million boost to our area's economy. It would halve public transport journey times from Lichfield to Burton and cut journey times from Sutton Coldfield and Lichfield to Derby and Nottingham by up to a third. It would mean easier travel for work, for leisure and, crucially, easy access from my constituency to the University of Derby. It would take pressure off the heavily congested A38, which runs parallel to the railway, and reopening this line would also open up the possibility of a new station at the village of Olrywas to serve the National Memorial Arboretum. A fantastic part of our country, a fantastic facility that I would advise everybody to visit. Unfortunately, it is very difficult on public transport. Our National Centre for Remembrance is shockingly underserved, not only just by train links, but also the only bus option from Tamworth is currently being rerouted by a miles-long detour because of Chetwynd Bridge. Chetwynd Bridge crosses the Tame right next to the Arboretum, but is closed to heavy vehicles due to problems with its maintenance. Despite support for the project from my predecessor, the Conservatives never funded the business case for the South Staffordshire line. And I really want to see not only action on Chetwynd Bridge, but action on that business case coming forwards so that we can really start to drive an improvement in rail connectivity, not only within regions, but also between regions from the West Midlands to the East Midlands. And the South Staffordshire line is a fantastic place to start on that. Thank you very much.
Andrea Hack.
Ms Furness, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I also want to thank the member for Aldridge Brownhills for bringing forward this important debate on transport in the Midlands. One of my favourite subjects, so I had to go for it. I represent North West Leicestershire, so my focus will inevitably be on the East Midlands. My constituency is at the heart of the National Forest, and East Midlands Airport rests at the very top of it. However, in tune with other semi-rural constituencies, we have no passenger rail at all and a pretty poor level of bus connectivity. However, as North West Leicestershire is also not in the East Midlands Combined Authority, it will not directly benefit from the financial settlement allocated to the city regions. So I would welcome the Minister's view on how those areas within the Midlands, but not covered by devolution, can get a fair sense of transport connectivity. Before I came to this place, I sat on the Highways and Transport Committee at Leicestershire County Council. I know firsthand how poor transport funding has been under the last Conservative government. And for Leicestershire, that has been poor, with 62% of services being cut in my constituency alone. I lost count as a county councillor of the amount of notifications of bus service changes I received, which included cuts bit by bit. And in doing so, that cut off public transport access to healthcare, college, work and leisure. Thankfully, through new funding, thanks to our government and our real clear commitment to public services, we can restore some of that. Although frustratingly, it can be difficult to liaise with our county colleagues to get the changes in services our communities desperately need. It still feels so disjointed and patchy, and I know this is not going to be solved overnight. In 2023-24, the East Midlands had the lowest transport spending per head of the population at just £368 per person, compared to the UK average of £687 and London at £1,313. And between 2019 and 2024, research shows that the East Midlands received £10.8 billion less in funding than if it had been allocated just at the average, not at the London level. Absolutely.
My honourable friend is making
Throwing
such an important point and making it very effectively. The Conservative government between 2019 and 2024 gave the East Midlands, as you have been setting, as my honourable friend has been setting out, a quarter of the funding that it gave London, only half the average of England. And I know that my honourable friend doesn't benefit from the £2 billion that our brilliant East Midlands Mayor Clare has been able to secure for transport. But would she agree that if our regional transport was more equal, it would create more prosperity, more economic growth, more social equality and regional development?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention. I think that the economic benefit we get from effective and connected transport is there for us to see. Having not ever worked in London before, I think it always surprises me just how easy it is to get to places. A bus gets cancelled, a train gets handled. It's fine. There's one 5 minutes ahead. If a bus gets cancelled in my constituency, you need to get a taxi to get home because you are not getting home. And I think that is the inequality that we see. So what does this actually mean in my constituency? Well, around 87.4% of households in my constituency have access to one car or a van. And that compares 61% in Manchester and 22% here in London. With the lack of available and reliable public transport, more people are forced to rely on personal transport, thereby increasing the volume of cars and vans on our roads. And that also has a devastating impact. 80% of East Midlands commuters will drive, while average rail journeys per resident is just 7 per year, which is half the rate of the West Midlands and a third of the east of England. In fact, East Midlands Airport has the highest proportion of travellers getting to the airport by car at 91%, and that is mainly down to the connectivity. That is the lowest of all of our airports across the UK. So we have to think about transport connectivity, rail, bus, and actually how are we getting to our airports. North West Leicestershire haven't had a passenger rail service since the Ivanhoe closed in my constituency in the 60s. My constituency heavily relies on buses, but I'll say so much more on the Ivanhoe line next week in a dedicated debate on this subject. So I'm going to have time to talk about transport again next week. So I just thought I'd do a little bit of work about actually how it is at the moment for my constituents to get to their nearest train station. So Colville, the station is about 12 miles away. They could get to Loughborough or to Leicester. It takes an hour on public transport, and that is just far too long. It's about 30 minutes by car. It would also take you about an hour to get from Ashby-de-la-Zouch to Burton train station, but that includes more than one bus. So that could be problematic for travellers, and I know travellers actually are really reluctant to take multi-bus journeys because of the failure of one in the step might be a problem. Residents in Kegworth have the most convenient journey to a train station via public transport, which is Loughborough at just 36 minutes, although East Midlands Parkway train station is only a few minutes by car. We are so massively underserved by this connection problem between rail and buses. The fact of the matter is my constituents are having to make ridiculous, non-efficient journeys just to get to where we need to get to. I'd welcome the Minister's view on connecting communities as a real barrier for that growth, as my friend for Derby North raised in her intervention. My constituents tell me that they're driving anyway to get to the train station, often in the wrong direction. They just continue by car to their actual destinations. They avoid getting on the train altogether, meaning more cars on our roads and more pressure on our road network. Now, obviously, there are simple examples, but I want to think about that, what it means for my constituents when they're trying to get to work, to school, to hospital. Accessible, efficient, reliable public transport should not be a luxury. It shouldn't have to be a postcode lottery, yet it seems to be. In fact, when I meet with young people across my constituency, they tell me that a huge barrier to getting the training opportunities they want and deserve, the apprenticeship and the classes that they want to get to, public transport is actually a huge barrier. Just recently, I had a resident in Ashby-de-la-Zouch get in touch about the problem of their daughter getting to college in Loughborough, and I thought it'd be useful to share her words. The number of buses are extremely limited, and this results my daughter in leaving the house at 6:30 a.m. and not returning home until 7 p.m, with several hours waiting in and around bus stops. For a girl of 16, that is not ideal. Secondly, the services on multiple occasions failed to turn up and left her in Loughborough without any way of getting home other than myself getting in the car to go and pick her up. When a young person is trying their best to get their life on track, the very last thing they should be doing is getting those additional hurdles in front of them. Yet for too many, transport or the lack of it becomes a deciding factor whether they can engage in their chosen education at all. If we get transport connectivity right, the impact on individuals, families and on the long-term prosperity of our regions can be transformational. I can't continue to accept the situation that my constituency has an international airport, yet has no passenger rail and such poor bus services. Thank you.
I just want to warn you that we may be having a vote soon, so it'd be good if we can have Luke Taylor.
Thank you very much, Ms Furness. A pleasure to serve under your chairship. And also thank you to the Right Honourable Member for Aldridge Brown Hills for being in this very important debate. Transport links are essential to our economy, tourism, trade and everyday life, but all too often they have been neglected. Up and down the country, people and businesses have been plagued by an inefficient, unreliable and unaffordable public transport system completely neglected by the former Conservative government. Now, as in many other areas of our creaking infrastructure, the public finds itself wondering when the change promised by the Labour government, like another heavily delayed train, will finally arrive. Too many rural communities, as we've heard at length today, remain effectively cut off from public transport. Growing up in Market Raisin in Lincolnshire, I distinctly remember the frustration of simply trying to get to Lincoln or beyond to Newark or Nottingham, with single-carriage trains, unpredictable and unreliable, filling the air with thick black diesel smoke. These challenges impacted the job opportunities of people I grew up with. It left our local economy, though beautiful and traditional in its own way, hanging off the edge of the rest of east of England like a loose thread. It is startling that now, more years later than I care to admit, very little has changed. I'm going to channel the father of the House, the Right Honourable Member for Gainsborough, and join his calls for improved services to Market Raisin, including a direct link to King's Cross that may well improve the connections to the rest of humanity for my hometown. So we've heard today already how suburban communities like Smethwick and Solihull, Loughborough and Long Eaton have long suffered for years with poor train and bus services too. In fact, it could be said that suburban towns don't quite get the attention they deserve in this debate. And as someone who represents a suburban town on the outer bounds of London, let me reassure members present that the problems discussed today are not completely alien to those faced by commuters in Sutton. Having lived in rural Lincolnshire and lived and worked in Lichfield, Ilkeston, Nottingham, and travelled to Broughton in North Wales for years on the train and bus services, I personally suffered the impacts of this lack of connectivity. However, it isn't just about grand plans for infrastructure, even though, as an engineer and a recovering transport planner, I wish all problems could be solved by it. It's also about delivery and real funding for those projects, coupled with good leadership and real results that really will improve people's lives. That's why the Liberal Democrats have welcomed the government's announcement last week that they're backing the long-standing Lib Dem calls to finally deliver Northern Powerhouse Rail. A clear Lib Dem win, if ever I saw one. Their plan, following the completion of Northern Powerhouse Rail, to build a new rail link through the Midlands from Birmingham to Manchester is welcome. But with just over £1 billion of funding...
Dave Robertson.
I might make that. No, go on. It's always great to see the Liberal Democrats finding a South East MP to come and talk about transport in the Midlands and North Wales.
I haven't got any of those.
He does mention the well overdue news that the government will be actually following through on the high speed or the rail improvement projects, building south to north to south rather than south to north, as they always should have done. I just wonder if he'd like to reflect on the fact that those areas that have returned massive Labour majorities are now seeing the investment from a Labour government, and whether he's absolutely certain that he wants to claim that as a Liberal Democrat win.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and I think we can all agree that when we see the investment going in, when we see those tracks being laid, when we see those services turning up to stations, I think that's when we will all agree that there's a win from any government. I think for too long we've seen empty promises that haven't been funded, that haven't arrived. So I think maybe we can all pause our congratulations and backslapping until those projects finally materialise. To continue, with just over £1 billion worth of funding allocated so far for those projects, we on these benches had hoped for something more concrete. Indeed, beyond the up to £45 billion spent headline, merely a £1.1 billion commitment to spend another 5 years making a plan to make a plan to consult on a consultation is cold comfort to those whose dreams of a truly joined-up economy rest on the delivery of this project. The dreams of not just businesses and councils, but ordinary people and community groups. It has not done enough yet to convince us that following a decade of broken promises and distant dreams for transport in the north, things are really on the cusp of real change. Indeed, for communities who have been waiting for rail upgrades for years, like a young boy waiting for the train to Lincoln on the platform at Market Raisin Station, it will be another long wait before we see spades in the ground. That is why the Liberal Democrats are calling for the government, like the trains we so badly need, to go further and faster to improve transport links in the Midlands and North Wales. The economy of our entire country will benefit from reversing years of overlooked investment in transport systems. The statistics make this clear, with my home region of the East Midlands receiving the lowest transport spending per head in 23-24 at just £368 per person, a quarter of London and half of the average for England. Wales received just £566 per head compared to the £693 average for England and £763 in Scotland. Passengers and businesses across the Midlands and North Wales deserve better, and the Liberal Democrats will continue to hold the government's feet to the fire in delivering improvements for them. And to reiterate, we don't pretend the challenges the government inherited are easily fixable. British Railways were left in a terrible state by the previous Conservative government, but with the network still plagued with delays, high ticket prices and overcrowding, many Brits are still fed up with the state of the British Railways nearly 2 years on from the general election. And the government would do well to remember that all that most passengers want to see is the strong delivery and good leadership I mentioned, regardless of who owns the railways. People want better, more reliable and affordable services, full stop. If nationalisation fails to make the impact it promised, which the early warning signs indicate may be the outcome of the government's intervention, then nothing will have changed. So, in the spirit of constructive opposition, I invite the Minister to consider how they might align their plans more closely with the Liberal Democrat plans for our railways. Namely, I invite the Minister to meet with my Liberal Democrat colleagues to discuss introducing a passengers' charter, as my honourable friend, the member for Didcot and Wantage, laid before the House yesterday. It would go a long way towards offering passenger protections on reliability, accessibility, affordability, amenities such as Wi-Fi and toilets and seat guarantees, and could be folded into the development of the ongoing Railways Bill. Similarly, will the Minister outline how they plan to significantly extend the electrification of Britain's rail network without committing, as we have done, to a 10-year plan for more electric trains, greater investment in batteries and ensuring all new lines are electrified as standard? These measures could make a huge difference to the carbon impact of our train network, including creating new capacity for freight to be carried by rail rather than by road, whilst delivering real results for passengers at the same time. And finally, I invite the Minister to outline why they aren't working with local authorities, not just in the Midlands and North Wales, but across the nation, to unleash the pent-up capability of transport-led economic growth in our towns and cities. The repeatedly delayed Leeds tram would be a great start, as would, if you'll indulge me, extending the TfL tram to Sutton. Although I imagine the Minister will be able to discuss some of these matters with the Mayor of Greater Manchester face-to-face, much sooner than he had anticipated when he woke up this morning. Thank you.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Ms Furness. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my right honourable friend on securing this important debate. Today, it is not the first time I have heard her make the case for Aldridge Station, which she does with considerable force. She has not just been consistent on campaigning for this, but consistently impressive and determined in her campaigns for it and wider transport issues, particularly in the West Midlands. Much has been said about the daily reality facing passengers, businesses and communities across the Midlands and North Wales region, where ambition has too often outpaced delivery. Transport is not an end in itself. It is the wiring that allows our economy to function, and when that wiring is faulty, growth stalls, opportunity narrows, and communities are left behind. Nowhere is that clearer than in the Midlands. A recent report by the Centre for Cities put it starkly. They said transport is the wiring that allows urban economies to function, but in large UK cities outside London, that wiring is simply not working as it should. Today, with a fragmented network, only around 600,000 people, just 20% of the city region, can reach Birmingham city centre efficiently. But with properly integrated transport, increased bus frequency and reduced journey times, that figure could rise by over 250,000 people, a 44% increase, taking connectivity to nearly 30% of the city region. That is not a marginal gain, it is the difference between a city region that functions as a single labour market and one that does not. Buses, of course, remain the backbone of local transport, particularly for young people and those without easy access to a private car or rail. Targeted youth fares, such as those introduced in the Tees Valley and Wales, have shown what can be achieved. But fares alone are not enough if services are unreliable, infrequent, or poorly connected to rail and tram networks. Integration is the missing piece. Joining up existing networks so they function as one system is the fastest and most cost-effective way to improve public transport in England's major cities outside London. With greater devolved powers, Metro mayors can increase frequencies, reduce journey times and better connect buses with commuter rail and tram networks, but only if national government provides clarity, consistency and backing. The consequences of poor coordination are most visible on rail. Take the Midlands Rail Hub, of which we have heard a lot in this debate. A project critical to unlocking capacity, improving frequency and enabling stations and services that would better connect communities across the region. Instead of certainty, we have partial funding, endless reviews and projects left, and I quote, subject to future decisions, a phrase worthy of whatever sequel will come to Yes Minister. This matters not just for the Midlands, but for North Wales too, particularly when it comes to open access rail, which has the potential to deliver connectivity more quickly and introduce genuine competition. Proposals from Wrexham, Shropshire and Midlands Railway to operate direct services between Wrexham and London would significantly strengthen links between North Wales, the Midlands and our capital. This is exactly the kind of market-led connectivity that can expand access to jobs, education and private investment. But open access services can only succeed if the supporting infrastructure is in place. Capacity constraints, missing stations and poor integration with local transport risk meaning trains pass through communities rather than serve communities. If the government is serious about improving connectivity across the Midlands and North Wales, it must ensure that decisions on infrastructure enable new services like the WSMR rather than frustrate them. The wider connectivity challenge is felt acutely around Wrexham Industrial Estate, one of the largest in Europe. Major employers there, including JCB, Platts Agriculture, Kellogg's and Networld Sports, have highlighted persistent difficulties for workers travelling from surrounding villages due to poor public transport links into the estate. There has been a welcome announcement of a new bus network designed to link communities with industrial estates within the Flintshire and Wrexham investment zone. But business and residents alike are still waiting for the detail, routes, frequencies, timelines, and how these services will integrate with existing rail and bus networks. Connectivity is not just about long-distance rail. It is about whether someone can reliably get from their village or their town to work on time and at a reasonable cost. Without that last-mile integration, growth zones risk becoming isolated islands of investment. These challenges are mirrored elsewhere in North Wales. The A55, the North Wales Main Line and the Menai crossings are strategic routes not just for Wales, but for the entirety of our United Kingdom. Yet road projects have been frozen, rail electrification funding withdrawn, and a blanket 20-mile-per-hour policy imposed without regard to the economic impact or any regard for common sense. Labour's own explanatory memorandum acknowledges that default 20-mile-per-hour limits could cost the Welsh economy up to £9 billion. Yet the policy was forced through despite a record-breaking Senate petition opposing it. Only yesterday, it was confirmed that repairs to the Menai Suspension Bridge, one of just 2 crossings linking Anglesey to the mainland, will be delayed yet again, now stretching into 2027. This Grade 1 listed structure, approaching its 200th anniversary, remains subject to weight limits and traffic lights, with still no long-term plan for resilience. That is not a minor inconvenience. It affects emergency response times, supply chains, tourism, livelihoods. That is why Conservatives have consistently argued for a third Menai crossing, working constructively to deliver the infrastructure North Wales needs. In both the Midlands and North Wales, the pattern is the same. Ambition without delivery, promises without integration, and growth plans without the connectivity to support them. So I say to the Minister, if the government is serious about growth and levelling up, It must focus on delivering better transport connectivity now, joining up existing networks, backing proven projects, supporting new rail services, and ensuring people can get to work, education and opportunity. The government's call for evidence on an integrated national transport strategy closed in February 2025, yet we're still waiting for the outcome. I would therefore ask the Minister directly, when will the results of that consultation be published, and how will they support better connectivity across regions such as the Midlands and North Wales, rather than adding further uncertainty? As Jonathan Spruce, a trustee of the Institute of Civil Engineers, told the Transport Select Committee, planning transport without an overreaching framework is like trying to solve a jigsaw without the picture on the box. The government must help put that picture in place so regions can plan, spend and connect with confidence.
Minister to respond.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to see you in the chair, Ms Furness. I'm conscious we do have a vote imminent, it looks like. I thank the Honourable Member for Aldridge and Brown Hills for securing this important debate and for her continued advocacy for her constituents in the wider West Midlands. Look, transport connectivity is not just an abstract policy issue. It is very much shaping people's daily lives, how they get to work, how they get to education, healthcare, and stay connected to their loved ones and communities. And connectivity sits at the very heart of this government's mission to drive economic growth, unlock housing and tackle regional inequality. We're moving away from the fragmented short-term decision-making towards an integrated, people-focused system. Our ambition is clear: a transport network that works for everyone, wherever they live. The Midlands has long been a national transport heartland, from historic canals and industrial-era railways to engineering leadership in Birmingham, Derby, Coventry, Solihull and beyond. The region has always known that connectivity drives prosperity. That legacy continues today through metro expansion, HS2 and innovations such as the Coventry Very Light Rail, which I was very lucky to see myself, cementing the Midlands' role as both a historic engine of growth and a testbed for the next generation of connectivity. Supporting new public transport connectivity across the West Midlands Combined Authority, we confirmed £15.6 billion for transport for city region settlements, including nearly £2.4 billion for the region to 2032, complementing the £5.7 billion already allocated through CRSTS. This long-term funding will deliver integrated transport at scale and end fragmented uncertainty. And because this government is backing, I have a lot to get through, and I really would like to respond to the honourable member's points in due course, if that's all right. And because this government is backing Mayor Richard Parker's plans, exciting progress is already visible. Metro extensions, rail stations, new rail stations, Dudley Interchange, a new active travel corridor, are transforming connectivity for millions across the region. Connectivity, however, does not stop at mayoral boundaries. Through the Consolidated Transport Fund, all local transport authorities will benefit from more predictable, flexible and aligned funding. Over £1.3 billion will be delivered across the West Midlands by 29-30 to strengthen the links between our towns, cities and rural areas. Moving on to the integrated national transport strategy mentioned by the Shadow Minister. Look, embedding this investment we will soon set out, as I said, the integrated national transport strategy, a people-centred approach, recognising that different regions face different challenges. It will focus on reliability, it will focus on safety, on accessibility and closer alignment between transport, housing, healthcare and public services, ensuring connectivity supports equality and opportunity for everyone. As the country which created the railways, they are an iconic part of the heritage of the West Midlands. Through GBR, we're building a simpler, more unified railway that delivers reliable, safe and better value journeys for local people, putting local priorities front and centre and deliver what communities actually need. In that context, the Midlands Rail Hub is a clear example of how targeted rail investment underpins economic growth and housing delivery. I'm going to stay consistent here. There is a lot of points that members made. I really would like to come back on them, but there's a lot to cover. In July 2025, the Chancellor committed to progressing to the next stage of the Midlands Rail Hub. Once delivered, the Midlands Rail Hub will enable up to 300 additional trains each day into and out of central Birmingham and improve services at 50 stations, transforming regional connectivity and providing the capacity needed to unlock sustainable growth. The honourable member will know the difficult position that this government inherited on HS2. Past mismanagement led to significant cost increases and delays. Nevertheless, this government has taken the decisive action to reset the programme, to progress delivery at the lowest reasonable cost, and recognising the importance of strengthening connectivity between the West Midlands and the North West. On the 14th of January, as part of our plans for Northern Powerhouse Rail, we also set out our long-term intention to deliver a full new rail line between Birmingham and Manchester. And now I appreciate that in taking this responsible long-term decision on future capacity needs on the West Coast Main Line, that it will, of course, prolong the uncertainty for residents and businesses along the route. I can assure all honourable members that we will listen to concerns of businesses and residents and honourable friends when making decisions about land powers, and we will work with them and with HS2 to ensure that we seek to minimise the disruption to people's lives as far as possible. I also understand that a number of honourable members affected are meeting with the Secretary of State and the Rail Minister next week to discuss this very issue, but I thank them for raising some of those concerns. We've also recognised that railways in Wales have seen low levels of enhancement spending in recent years and are taking action to put that right. In 2025 spending review, and infrastructure strategy recognise Wales' long-term infrastructure needs and committed to delivering at least £445 million of rail enhancements to realise them. This funding will invest both North and South Wales, fixing level crossings, building new stations and upgrading existing lines. The plans for future rail investment in Wales are being made in close consultation with the Welsh Government, and it will be consulted ahead of the next spending review so that Wales' long-term infrastructure needs continue to be recognised. We also recognise the honourable member's interest in open access applications for Wrexham, Shropshire and Midlands Railway. Open access will continue to have a role in the reformed rail sector, and we understand the potential connectivity benefits that the Wrexham, Shropshire and Midlands Railway proposals could deliver. We have provided conditional support for this application, subject to the ORR and Network Rail being satisfied that services can be accommodated without compromising network performance and without adversely affecting the rights of the other operators. On buses remain the backbone of public transport, the everyday lifelines that keep connecting our communities. The Bus Services Act puts passengers firmly in control, driving better services and stronger local accountability. And from 26-27, over £3 billion in funding will boost local services nationwide, including £700 million in local authority bus grants. The West Midlands alone will receive £264 million to improve reliability, coverage and affordability. And for the first time, our formula recognises rurality, ensuring that isolated and underserved communities get the support they need. Cars, of course, are the most common way for people to get around and a dependable way. Well-maintained road networks keep our economy moving and daily life running smoothly. By 2930, we will be investing over £2 billion every year in local road maintenance, double what we inherited, giving councils 4-year certainty over their funding so they can shift from patching up potholes into making sure... Of course I can, very briefly.
Catherine Atkinson.
Derbyshire, according to the RAC, had the worst potholes in the country. East Midlands Mayor Claire Ward has announced £121 million for road maintenance, which is a 60% uplift on last year's funding. But with reform in control at the county council, the potholes in Derbyshire are still absolutely abysmal, with both our mayor and our government giving the funding needed for potholes. What can the Minister tell us about how we ensure that local authorities like reform-led Derbyshire actually get on and fill our potholes?
It's quite right to recognise the historic levels of funding going into local areas. I think it's almost doubling by the end of this Parliament. Obviously, when we increased funding just this year from 1.1 to 1.6 billion pounds, that came with some conditions about publishing transparency reports on websites. This funding that we've announced, this multi-year funding, will also come with some conditions, some incentives, to make sure that we manage to turn local authorities' attention from just patching those potholes and repeatedly going back and filling them again and again, which frankly is not a good use of taxpayers' money, into preventing them from forming in the first place and really ensuring that we're able to fully resurface roads and prevent those potholes from forming in the first place. So that accountability will be there for all your constituents, all the honourable members' constituents, to see where her council is or is not doing their job. And if they don't spend their money, we'll pass it on to a local authority, frankly, that will. Now, just touch on a few, because there were lots of things mentioned during that. Again, just coming back, actually, on the member for Derby North. Look, we're providing the East Midlands Combined County Authority with £2 billion through the Transport for City Regions, with East Midlands receiving £450 million from the local transport block. This means that the East Midlands will be receiving significantly more local transport spending per head than the England average in the coming years. We see that as £561 per person against the average of £391.
Andrea Ack.
I just wanted to reflect on those numbers. The East Midlands morality is not the East Midlands. It only covers Derbyshire, Derby, Nottingham, Nottinghamshire. How does the rest of the East Midlands fare in terms of funding?
My little friend's jumping ahead of my next comment, where I was going to come on to. Look, obviously, we mentioned obviously the department's providing all local transport authorities with that multi-year consolidated funding settlements, delivering on our commitment in the English Devolution White Paper to simplify funding. So Leicestershire County Council will be allocated £22.5 million in local authority bus grant over the next few years, in addition to £8.2 million they received in 25-26. Now, what I'd say to the Honourable Lady is it's now for her local authority, which I appreciate is run by a Reform Council, to use that funding to best effect. You touched upon, the Honourable Lady touched upon bus services as well. What I'd say politely to her local authority is they have the funding, they have the powers, get on with the job. Just to touch on Aldridge Station, so I thank the Honourable Lady for her comments on that, and as a former Minister for State in the Department of Transport. Now, Mayor Andy Street failed to use £1.05 billion allocated to him in 2022 to fully develop designs for Aldridge Station in the Honourable Member's constituency when he had the chance. This government has allocated a record £2.4 billion in the Transport City Region funding for the West Midlands Combined Authority. I'll finish my point. Mayor Richard Parker is delivering on local priorities and taking forward schemes that are good value for taxpayers and deliver real improvements. And I'd say to the Honourable Lady, she perhaps want to explain when she intervenes in a moment, why the previous Mayor didn't use the money allocated to complete the design work when Aldridge Station at the time. £3.6 million allocated from CRSTS funding for development from this Mayor, with a report due later this year.
Thank you, Ms Furness. I'm happy to come back. But, I mean, the point about Aldridge Station here is, let's be absolutely clear. Mayor Andy Street allocated the money for Aldridge Station. I questioned both the Transport Secretary and the Treasury about this money and had a reply that explained to me that the money had been moved by this Labour government out of the budget for Aldridge Station. Had the Mayor left the money in place, Aldridge Station could have been funded and delivered by 2027. The only money that Mayor Parker has allocated to Aldridge is for some initial groundworks to be done. There is a business case that is already there. This is not about funding. This, I'm sad to say, is about politics.
What I'd say to the Honourable Lady is Mayor Andy Street failed to deliver a fully developed design for Aldridge Station. And frankly, when we promise to deliver something here, we're going to do it with a sound business case. But he didn't have the designs, frankly. And what I'd say is he failed to deliver that. There was £1.05 billion there delivered. He did not do that. £3.6 million now, in a sensible, pragmatic way, is being invested by this mayor for the development report to do this properly, to make sure that we have value for taxpayers' money and deliver the best possible solution. And that report will be due later this year. I'm going to make progress. Look, this government is backing Wales and the Midlands and all our regions with long-term investment, local autonomy and an integrated approach across buses, across rail, across roads and, of course, active travel. We are building not an isolated scheme, but a coherent people-focused system that strengthens growth, strengthens opportunity and pride in place. Together, the Midlands and Wales have long shaped the nation's transport history. And with this programme, we'll continue to drive national connectivity for decades to come. Thank you.
Wendy Morton to wind up.
Thank you, Ms Vanessa. First of all, I'd just like to thank colleagues from across the House for joining this debate this afternoon, from Cannock Chase, Lichfield, Newcastle under Lyme, North West Leicestershire and Derby North, showing that whether you're East Midlands, West Midlands or Staffordshire, rail or transport, actually, connectivity absolutely matters and absolutely matters to our communities. And I think that is where there's a lot of cross-chamber, cross-party consensus. We know why this matters. And that, Ms Vanessa, is why the train station in Aldridge absolutely matters. I have had no more answers from the Minister than I typically get from the dispatch box. At one point, I wasn't sure if he was even going to mention Aldridge train station, but I'm glad that he did. But the fact of the matter remains, I've set out the case. Aldridge deserves better. Aldridge will keep asking what has happened to fully funding our train station, and I will continue to campaign and bang on about it. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered transport connectivity in the Midlands and North Wales. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. On the contrary, I think the ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. Order, order. Sitting is suspended until 3 p.m. Let's go.